My name's Nic MacLeod. I am the Policy and Public Affairs Assistant for Scottish Land and Estates, also sometimes known as SLE. I have quite a varied background in my career thus far. So I'm just going to give you a bit of an outline as to where I started and how I've come to where I have today, and then also all of the steps that you could kind of take along the way and all the different avenues that you have available to you across the career opportunities in rural. So I'm from a farm myself, in kind of the west coast of Scotland. Farming is not my main family business, so it wasn't something that I was necessarily going to go into straight away. When I left school at 16, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, as I'm sure most of you don't. It's such a hard decision to have to make for potentially the rest of your life. So I went to work for a local family business that did some construction, and I continued to kind of work for them and kind of suss out my skill set, what I was good at, what I enjoyed, and what I wanted to pursue. Um, from there, I moved into property and looked at kind of more the construction management side of things alongside building, and then kind of people management skills, etc. And then I had the opportunity to move to Canada, which I took with open arms, and moved to Canada for 3 years. And when I was out there after 6 years in property, I wanted to do something different. Being from a farm and kind of always having that love of nature and animals, that was something that I kind of thought I wanted to follow into. And I started working in veterinary clinics. So having that kind of transferable skills of management, of also kind of having the customer service, dealing with people, managing timelines, those are all transferable skills that I took along with me, and that made me a good candidate alongside some animal handling for that role. I then went on to in Canada, there was many opportunities, many of which I took. One of those was an opportunity to manage a construction firm, to bring again all of the transferable skills I'd learned along the way, alongside an opportunity to manage, which I took and managed that company for over a year. And then finally, before I left Canada, moved in to manage a veterinary clinic, which was a huge opportunity and a massive step up. But again, those transferable skills and the options that I'd kind of gained and learned along the way really helped with that. Then we came back to Scotland mid-COVID, which was not ideal. So I kind of took a step back and thought about what my plans were long term, where I wanted to go career wise, what I wanted to pursue, and what I was really passionate about. And rural and farming has always been a massive thing for me. I shoot regularly, so kind of having that tie-in to wildlife management, moorland, ag, everything like that. SLE seemed like such a great fit for me, and just with what I was passionate about and the skills that I possessed. So I ended up being a regional manager for Scottish Land and Estates from April 2022, and I've worked for them for a couple of years. And then I took the opportunity to kind of focus my career on looking at moving into policy, to affect the change that happens alongside being able to actually influence the lobbying efforts that we do and kind of help the policy team in that regard. So with the view to moving into a policy team to be a policy advisor, which is my kind of end goal at the moment, was this step moving in from the regional team to then, be able to kind of glean insight into all of the policy topics that we have. And we have had quite a lot of work over the last couple of years with the Muirburn wildlife management, things like that, all the bills that have come through, and then looking forward with nature and other things with the grouse moor licensing. There's so much happening in moorland that it's really kind of gleaned an insight into the deeper aspects of the policy that come through from someone who's normally on the other side, as a member of a syndicate and different things. So it's being able to kind of gain access into all of the sort of policy topics to then kind of look at trialing them out per se to see which one kind of focuses better for me, and where I want to move forward. So within SLE, we have a huge range of careers. We have people from business management all the way through to policy advisors. And then you have, obviously higher up the food chain, you've got the kind of directors and then an RCE. But we, kind of vary so broadly from housing and tourism access all the way through to moorland and things like that. So there's a huge variation within our organisation, which is relatively small, for career opportunities, and then kind of being able to move between the teams and have the skills and the assets to do so is quite an easy move. So yeah, is that okay?
Fabulous. Thank you so much for that and
No
for
worries.
coming on today. I think we've probably got a few questions for you, if that's all right.
Of course.
So just wondering if you've got any advice that you would give to any young person that was thinking about going into these types of roles.
Definitely kind of do your research, kind of reach out to people in the kind of local community or other organizations that you know that you could maybe look at doing some experience days, and then you can get an idea of what you it's hard to know what you'll be passionate about until you kind of try it. And if this is an avenue that you think you're interested in, definitely look at engaging with the Scottish Regional Moorland groups. Anything to do with Basque, they do quite a lot of kind of days and things like that, as well as, you could be a beater for a day on a shoot to kind of get an idea of all that goes into being a gillie or being a keeper. And there's so many avenues within wildlife management and moorland that have sort of a huge array of tasks on a daily, weekly, monthly basis that, it's really hard to kind of captivate all of that. So if you were to look to do one of these careers, I would definitely suggest just go reach out to someone, try and find somewhere to go and just experience it, and see what you kind of feel and what you think might be your passion projects.
Fabulous. I think we've got another question here in the chat. What would you say is the best part of your job that you do at the moment?
Well, that's a really hard question. It's so varied. I would say that kind of activating that change and being part of the solution. So a lot of policy comes through and it's made by people who are in government or in parliament, and the kind of boots on the ground practical knowledge is that there's a kind of missing link there, and being able to influence to say this is a great outline for what you think you want to do, however the delivery and the actual impact of what you're planning to put into legislation is massive, and being able to bring active keepers, farmers, estate owners to Parliament and vice versa to meet with MPs and say, this is the practicality of what's going to happen, and this is how we can adjust and lobby to affect change. Is probably the best for me.
So why do you think wildlife management is so important at this present time?
Hugely important, massively so for conservation and biodiversity. So if you look at figures and kind of reviews of managed grouse moors, for example, versus unmanaged grouse moors, the amount of ground nesting birds, biodiversity and conservation efforts that are on that managed grouse moor are so significantly higher than those that are not. And we are kind of looking at ground nesting birds as a source, deer management, so many of these things alongside renewables projects, they all kind of coincide with one another, and being able to effectively manage land to then allow for, yes, a recreational sport alongside agriculture, alongside renewables, and then also affect change in biodiversity and climate, is really, I mean, a key piece of how we're going to deliver for 2030. And that's a huge aspect of what moorland management is. So these are really important people who are so vastly knowledgeable on what they are doing, and it's for them something that's more than a job. It's a passion, and it's really important to recognise that across the industry.
Thank you. We've got another question here. So, for a young person thinking about going into this sector, is there a practical training course that you would recommend?
There are a few. You would probably be best at the kind of rural colleges, have kind of great organisational options for working with different organisations to outsource if that's not something that they don't provide. But if you were looking at like SRUC, SEC are a good contact, Barony, different places like that, depending on where you are. If you reach out to a rural college and let them know that this is something you would be interested in this kind of sector, there are gamekeeping courses, there are wildlife management courses, there are lots of different options that you could follow depending on what your keen interest is. And you could look at doing something that would get you a kind of overall knowledge and then be able to focus in on that later on if that was something you wanted to do. So conservation, other options like that are all really transferable into wildlife management.